We'll start with a quote. 10 million for a billion. That's what Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham called the deal the state and the city of Albuquerque made with NBC Universal. The 10 million being what the two governments are giving the studio, among other incentives. Joining us to discuss this is this week's opinion panel. Former member of the State House of Representatives, Janice Arnold-Jones is with us. Tom Garrity of the Garrity Group PR and a regular on this program. And an athlete, I should add, as well. And also with us is Harry Van Buren. He's a professor in the Anderson School of Management at UNM. And Giovanna Rossi, president of Collective Action Strategies and host of KUNM's Well Woman Show. Thanks all for being here. Now, Janice, the studio has promised 300 jobs at an annual salary of $58,000. That's well above the average for the city, for the county, for the state. Is that worth the money that we're giving them? Just the quick math right there. We'll start with that.
So if they hire 330 people,
Right.
and if the time frame is 5 years, that's impressive. If it's 10 years, it might not be as impressive. And so you need to look at the numbers, and the numbers are what they are. So
Right.
if the governor says it's 10 million for a billion, well, I have a little problem with those numbers because the commitment is a 5-year commitment. No matter what, the state is on the hook for the 10 million. When we talk about incentives, so if they put in $500 million, which is it's not chump change,
Right.
But their actual commitment is 330 million, and our additional commitment is another 176 million.
Right.
That's the way this works. And so you didn't ask me, am I glad they're here? I am thrilled that they are here.
You are, okay.
I am
Okay.
thrilled. And since I went to the old Albuquerque High School in that area, in Martinez Town, I couldn't be more pleased.
There you go. Yep.
But if you ask me about the long term, will we make it to 10 years? So having had an audio and video production company of my own in California, I've seen this cycle. And when the president of Disney says, we're going to bring all the production back to Hollywood, it gives me pause.
Right.
And let me say one other thing.
Please.
So I have been forever, I do not like this tax incentive program.
Right.
I don't like its structure. I think it is unfair. I think that and I am really glad that the NBC folks actually have a facility. Good first step. I'd like to see them living here. Better step.
That's right.
But it is unfair. So if you want to solve New Mexico's problems, what if we applied this tax policy to medical professionals, something that we truly need? What about that? And I think you will go, ooh, maybe this is not such a great tax program.
Interesting. Interesting point there. All right, Harry, interesting. They say they're going to bring in $1 billion plus in direct spending to the community over 10 years. Are you buying that number as well? I have a thought on that too, but
yeah,
I'm curious.
Hollywood math always seems to be a little bit different than actual math, and that actual math adds up, and Hollywood math seems not to add up nearly so much. It feels a little bit optimistic to me.
Does it? Well, let me throw this at you. It is estimated that when the Breaking Bad folks were here, they were doing $1 million in direct spend per episode.
Right.
And they did 65 episodes, I believe, if I have that number right here.
Right.
And I think that's what they're sort of basing this on, around $1 million, maybe just a little bit under over the course of those 10 years. Does that make more sense just as a back of the envelope sort of?
It might make more sense as a back of the envelope thing. I think Janice's point about 5 years versus 10 years is really important.
Right.
I have to say I am always a little skeptical about these sorts of programs as well, because you've got to ask the fundamental question, why is Hollywood, or why is the media, or why is entertainment different? We could attract lots of businesses if we were funding 25 or 35% of their expenses. And it's one thing if it's going to generate these network effects, like we're going to bring in skilled labor and we're going to bring in educational institutions will be involved. And if that's the case, and we're really starting to build an industry that's going to be stable, it may be worth the upfront cost to do that. But I think I would probably take the same position that a lot of people would take with regard to sports stadiums or other sorts of subsidies, that it's probably better to focus on the long-term business environment as it is to try to subsidize a particular industry. And I've still never gotten an explanation about why it is that entertainment is special in this regard, because lots of businesses would have a similar multiplier effect.
Well, they're more persuasive. It's just that simple.
Well,
entertainment.
and it's seen as a branding
they're persuasive
sort of thing.
people.
When I moved here in 2003, the big issue was keeping the TV show Cops from filming because that was bad PR. So I get it. I get why there would be a desire to bring Hollywood here.
That's right.
I'm just not convinced that this is any better than any other industry.
Good point there. $3 million from the city. That's not a lot of money. And it's LEDA funding. That's not a big commitment for potentially a lot of money coming into the city of Albuquerque. Good deal for the city?
Oh yeah, I think it's a great deal for the city. Okay. And just to clarify, it is actually $500 million in direct spending, and then the indirect is $1 billion.
I got you. Okay.
$1
Thank
billion
you for saying
plus
that.
and stuff. But regardless, it's a great deal for New Mexico and specifically for Albuquerque for a couple of reasons. One, as Janice mentioned, the economic infusion into the downtown area, Martinez Town specifically, but also it provides an avenue for the creative class. It provides us an opportunity to really engage and keep our young people, the millennials, in New Mexico, in Albuquerque specifically, instead of them heading out to Los Angeles or Austin or Denver in search of greener pastures. Right. So, the numbers are impressive. The investment by Edward Garcia and Garcia Realty
on the Garcia family.
is fantastic. Exactly. And by means of disclosure, my firm does work with NBC Comcast, but our scope does not include this particular
Appreciate that.
project.
Absolutely. Before we got started, we listened to some remarks that NBC's Universal's VP of Development had, talking about the long-term commitment to the state, to the industry.
It is that history that we have, that experience we have with this place, combined with the governor and the mayor's clear commitment to the long-term growth of the industry across New Mexico, that has given our teams the confidence to invest here, our teams the confidence to undertake this partnership.
And so, Giovanna, I want to ask, how important is that relationship that we can talk about multiple administrations now these folks have been working with? You think about NBC Universal, Netflix. There is a tale that we've got some history now in this industry. Is this about creating a cluster now? Netflix is one thing, but these two together could be the beginning of something that could grow very expansively.
Yeah, it's a good question, and back to Harry's earlier comment that, is this a one shot, or are we really developing something here long term? And so I think we could argue that, we can develop something long term. We've seen the growth of this industry in the state already in the last decade or so, or even more. So I think it's great news. I also want to just mention that there are some other details that are really attractive, I think, about this, which is, the spending on marketing of the state of New Mexico and Albuquerque. I think they have to spend $500,000 a year on that marketing strategy, which is no small change. That's great. They're also going to be spending money on workforce development. The amount was not as much, but
that's a big one, though.
But again, that's opening the door. And there's always room for improving that. And workforce development is definitely something we want to see. The other thing is they negotiated in using the state and city logo on everything that was produced here, which is probably part of a regular old negotiation. But to have that, I think that is attractive for New Mexico and for our state and our cities.
Right, interesting. Harry, let's get back to the business side of it, and I want to finish with Janice here. But I want to get back to this idea of the cluster.
Right.
We've been trying to do this with a lot of industries here for 20, 25 years. Clusters are the thing. Once you can get some, is this feel like a beginning of a cluster to you? Is something happening here?
It could be the beginning of a cluster, and notwithstanding my previous comments, to the extent that we're able to build a cluster, that's got to involve a lot of things. It's got to involve educational institutions. So UNM, for example, is doing work in film, for example, and digital media. Can we bring CNM involved to be doing some of the back office things? So to the extent that we're building a cluster, but the cluster has to be composed of people who are living here. And I think Janice's point about, are they living here or are they flying in and then flying out? If they're living here and we're creating a cluster and then we start to attract more and more of these productions, then I think you can start to make an argument where this upfront investment does make economic sense.
Would you tail onto that? Do you agree with that? Is it a possibility?
I do,
possibly?
and
Okay.
I actually think that there are economic developers who are going, look at the outflow from California. It is becoming very expensive to live there. And part of the stagecraft, the IATSE folks, it's hard for them to live there. So is there potential to relocate that industry here? My caution is that having been through this cycle several times, that the folks in Hollywood are very jealous of their industry, and if they see a real threat, there will be tremendous pressure to move back to Hollywood.
Although there's also an opportunity to get production, say, from Georgia, for example, and I know this is something that we've been trying to engage in outreach for.
Well, I'm saying, but we had, you may not remember this, but there was a time that Texas was a big draw. It no longer exists. One of the things that you're going to see happening, regardless of the discussion of abortion, is Georgia and Louisiana have pulled back their incentives.
Right.
This
Could
is
happen.
about money.
That's right.
It's
And,
about
and
money.
being opportunistic. That's right. It's a tough world that way. After the break, we'll look at a much smaller scale economic development project that leverages traditional ways of life in rural New Mexico.